So it opened, I wouldn't say to great acclaim, because no one really understood what was going on. We had a last-minute panic. The toilet cubicles hadn't arrived. We built toilet cubicles out of plywood sheets, and there were lots of things not ready. But it opened as the leader of the youth club. I decided that I was going to put the things that we did in the youth club, i.e. bands and rock bands and things like that, I would put those on in the theatre. And it wasn't always welcomed. I remember putting on a heavy rock band that were from Cardiff called Stray, and it was so loud, according to the board of management, that it was going to damage the roof.
Right. Okay.
But generally, we had to get local people in. We had to get them in, and we had to break down any of these feelings of elitism. And that's why I felt, and a lot of people, not just me, that we need to put on anything at all.
So Tim mentions how the theme became put on stuff, but they didn't just do that in the theatre, did they?
We used to do these road shows which would go around pubs just to let people know that we were here, and it was like sort of variety show. We had people walking on glass and things like that, a lot of magic involved. Graham Watkins, the then artistic director, had come to us from Stoke, and that was very much the style of the theatre in Stoke under Peter Cheeseman, very community-based. They did lots of documentaries on local issues, and that's the sort of thing that Graham was trying to create. So we did go out into the community a lot, and eventually got quite established as a company.
It all seemed at the very beginning. God, it seemed sort of there was so much going on, and that you were doing road shows and you were rehearsing and you were doing this in the evenings, and somebody would come up and saying, "What do you do then, boy? Back in Hereford, are you?" And you're going, "Well, I'm at the theatre now." The theatre, love you. At the theatre. But then within that Pembrokeshire thing, within 2 minutes, you're going, "Well, it's all right down there, I suppose, if it's not like the real thing." So I think, I think it's the commitment of the people involved in it that's kept it going.
Yeah.
Also, they did a thing called the Torch Roadshow. I remember Pete Doran, when he was ASM here, he was a young assistant stage manager. His father made some props out of steel. It was a community involvement thing, and everyone went out on these shows, and they weren't paid to do those road shows. And the idea was to get the Torch known to people, because there was a lot of resistance, actually.
Now, some very influential people who did loads for the Torch early on were too modest and self-effacing to come on this podcast. And indeed, we get the sense that there were loads of people beavering away behind the scenes, as there are today. Tim, for instance, mentioned Dave Randall, whose responsibility it was to get the theatre built. And we chatted to Anne Leaney, who has been active at the Torch since it opened. She's been an usher for 25 years and continues to contribute today.
My name is Anne Leaney. I have been involved with the Torch with 1 or 2 gaps since it first opened, or just before it opened. I've always been on stage. When I was 8, I was half an octopus, if you'll believe that. In the pantomime. So I've been working. My father was a brilliant actor, and when he came down here he got heavily involved, and so I sort of used to go along and have a look, and that's how it happened. Yeah. I was in Haverfordwest Operatic and Milford, because they were 6 months apart.
Yeah.
You had time for all this.
We asked Anne about the opening night.
They have the very heavy equipment backstage. We had about 4 or 5 men down moving it, and So there were 2 master mariners there that night. So,
So they could do the knots.
they could do all the knots they wanted.
It's interesting how Anne mentions master mariners helping behind the scenes and how their skills were so useful. This was a theatre truly taking advantage of special skills in its dock setting. Pete champions the unsung heroes too.
Loyal staff, I think, the permanent staff have been amazing. People like Roland Williams, Marjorie Jenkins, Bernard Prettyman, the likes of those, been here for ages, and really, really sort of connected with the community. They were the link between the community and us as a company. They were the face of the torch, if you like, and absolutely brilliant, so dedicated.
I'm really aware in crafting this podcast that we are leaving people out, people who've contributed a great deal to getting the torch to where it is today. So, Carol, you know more about it than I do. Can you list some of those people and just say what they've done?
Yeah, well, there's Sean Crowley, who has designed so many pantos and shows for the torch. I mean, some really memorable ones were One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Of Mice and Men, and Inspector Calls. Just thinking about those shows and the images that he put on the stage for us are just phenomenal. And of course there's Dave Ainsworth, who used to be a stand-up comedian and moved to Wales to teach drama, and he ran the youth theatre for many years and was incredibly popular around the schools of Pembrokeshire with his own unique sense of humour, but he brought such a lot and gave such a lot to so many kids. James Williams is another person that we can't forget. He's composed music for so many of the pantomimes, and I'm sure is such a lovely person to work with, because he was very, very encouraging and very tolerant, and brought the best out of everybody.
Yeah, that's great. And there have been countless heroines and heroes working in wardrobe, backstage, across.
Yeah, all doing. If you counted the hours that they worked, you wouldn't be able to pay them. We'd be bankrupt. Yeah. Some of what our interviewees say really surprised us, I think, and were elements we hadn't thought of before.
Well, it was outrageous when you think about it. The only other producing theatres were in Clwyd and Cardiff, as far as I know. There were plenty of theatres that were receiving theatres that bought shows in, but to produce your own plays in a place like Milford Haven was incredible, because for a start, your hinterland, your audience, you need about 100,000 people within so many square miles. The problem with Milford is most of those square miles are sea. Yeah. So you're on a peninsula, so you've got to attract people, from a long way away. And we did have people coming from, Swansea and Cardigan and Aberystwyth.
And of course, if you think about it, the catchment area is quite significantly in the sea. We love what Pete says here about the potential of what could be staged at the Torch.
What I always found fascinating with the Torch is that if we take the county of Pembrokeshire as the area that we're serving, well, television was established in Wales before theatre, and certainly in Pembrokeshire. We even had a Welsh TV channel before we had any theatre in this county, regular theatre. And I think that's fascinating, because you realise you've got hundreds of years of plays that you could put on here and they would be seen for the first time.
So, looking at these early days and the energy and commitment people put into creating the Torch, it's clear that local people very soon felt a loyalty and purpose to the place, a bit like a love affair. But I guess the fact that you've been ushering for 25 years or whatever, you wouldn't keep coming back, would you? If you
No, I wouldn't, no.
Yeah.
I was, after all the lockdowns, I thought long and hard. Then I thought, no, yes, short, I will come. But because I can't drive in the dark now, I have to come with the other Anne.
Yes.
And so we make a very good pair on a Thursday.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The 18.
And it's nice to come back.
But in general, you're optimistic.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I am optimistic. Well, nobody comes who doesn't want to come, I've decided, because they all come in and you say, oh, good evening, nice to see you. Oh, thank you, we're so looking forward to this. Maybe they come out downcast, but they go in expecting.
Yeah.
And very often, they just come in and say, it was absolutely lovely, we're so glad we came.
And the location in Pembrokeshire is lovely, the people, the audience, the fact that it's got an established audience that Peter's built up here over a number of years. It's a very warm place to work. The theatre itself is well appointed, well equipped, and it's a really friendly and safe environment. Faithful audiences, everything, every element of the theatre seems to work. They've got it right on every level, I think.